they started passing laws. The moment your feet, your ancestors' feet touched the ground, they started passing laws. Right? This is, I'm not making this up. This is history. We know. Right? Some of them were very clear about who they meant. No Chinamen. Right? But they also meant the Japanese because they don't know the difference. Okay? Some places were a little bit more sneaky because even in the early 1900s, they knew what the 14th Amendment was. And people had successfully used the 14th Amendment, so they tried to hide. They tried to hide the fact that they were going after Chinese and Japanese alone. They said, well, citizens ineligible to become citizens. Well, guess what? There were only two groups of people that were barred by law from becoming naturalized citizens. Chinese and Japanese. Did you know that? That the only way to become a citizen was to be born a citizen if you're Chinese. Because they couldn't stop the 14th Amendment. Right? And because they know they wanted to. But Chinese people and Japanese people were not allowed to naturalize. Many of you are naturalized citizens here. That was not allowed to happen until 1965. That you were allowed to become a citizen. Some of the laws. But look, a little bit up 1850s. A little bit in the middle 1800s. And then, boom, 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 boom. 1913, 1917, 1920, 1922, 21, 1922. This is just some of the states. But it's all the same pattern. It goes from a little bit more, and then when it happens, it will happen everywhere all at once. This is a warning before this happens. Okay. Why? I showed you what happened in the past. In the past, they said that Chinese people and Japanese people, all of them were spies. In the 1920s, in the 1800s, they said Chinese people and Japanese people were a danger because you can't trust them. You can't trust them. They're by nature. Just look at them. By nature, Asian people are not trustworthy. Look at how small their eyes are. You cannot trust them. Look at them. The point of telling you that is, nothing has changed. The idea that Chinese people, the Japanese people are untrustworthy, they are not loyal to this country, started in the middle of the 1800s. It has nothing to do with the CCP. It wouldn't matter. Back then, they would say you were loyal to the Emperor of Japan or the Emperor of China. CCP is just another placeholder for the idea that Asian Americans are not truly Americans. Okay? So, but that's in the past. Of all that stuff that happened in the past, why am I here today? Why am I here spending my own money, my own time, to come talk to you? Because, as many Chinese people say to me, I don't want anything to do with politics. I don't want to do politics, no. And I have to tell them, that's great, that's wonderful for you. I'm sorry though, you may not want anything to do with politics, but politics wants everything to do with you. Because in the history of this country, we have always found scapegoats. We have found punching bags. That when times are bad and we need somebody to get hurt so other people feel better, our community has been used time and time again. Right? And we have now a clear way of looking at how they're going to use us as a punching bag. Right? Project 2025, for users who don't know, is a masterpiece by the Heritage Foundation. This is the final culmination of years of work. So the short part of the story is simply, in the last Trump administration, people were very upset that not more things got carried out, and not more things were done and done correctly. And the way that we're going to fix that is next time we have a plan. Okay? Project 2025 is a complete analysis and recommendation for everything in the entire government. From the very, very top to the very, very bottom. Everything from national defense to nuclear missiles, down to education and environmental policy, everything is touched. Every single thing, 900 pages, every single thing in the entire world is in here. One of the big concerns of Project 2025 is national security, right? Probably the top thing that the government needs to do is make sure everyone's safe. Well, Russia, who is a nuclear power, the only people that we have nuclear weapons pointed at each other, right? Cold War for 30 years or more. Russia is only mentioned 108 times. Nuclear adversary. China is mentioned 800 times. So you want to know, does Project 2025 care about the Chinese American community? Here's your answer right here. Okay? Because the problem is, they don't see the difference between CCP and you. Because just like in the past, they see Asian people as being, by nature, disloyal. By nature, you're not good Americans. By nature, you're a spy. Okay? And I want to be clear. There's people out there who say, well, Project 2025 is just Heritage Foundation, and there's a bunch of crazy people. The Heritage Foundation is America's oldest and biggest conservative think tank. What they say becomes law within the matter of years. Right? If you want to know where Republicans and conservatives are going, Heritage Foundation can tell you. But it's not just them. This is their list. This is the list that they provided of who has worked on Project 2025. The list actually goes out to about here, but we ran out of space on one slide. This is every conservative group in America. This is everybody. Every single think tank, every single policy group, every advocacy group, every conservative group in America is in this part. Why? Because every single group had a role in creating Project 2025. So, let me ask you again. Right? Do you think that they're serious about Project 2025? Okay, and they're serious about China. Sorry to be biased, but Governor Tim Walz had a great quote. And it just simply said, if someone takes the time to write a 900-page plan, they're going to use it. Nobody makes a map and not use the map. Nobody writes a diagnosis and then not use the diagnosis. Okay, so I've actually made separate slides for Texas, for Tennessee that I went to last week, and now for Florida. There have been so many laws passed in the United States that I can do a separate presentation for basically every state now. Okay? Remember at the beginning, we talked about SB 147 in Texas, and then the Florida law. I don't remember the number, sorry. The Florida law, that was just property right. But I'm telling you, just like in the 1800s, it was never just property. Property was always first, because that's the easiest way to get rid of you. But it would not be the last. So we're here in Florida. On the left, these are the quotes, exact quotes from Project 2025. On the right is how Florida as a state has now carried those points out. Right? Here you have, Senate Bill 264. Essentially bans Chinese immigrants from buying land in Florida. Period. Right? This is now in appellate on our side, our community side, the ACLU is representing us, and they asked her some just very procedural questions, just statute of limitations, all this stuff. Very matter of fact. On the state side, when the state went to go defend the law, the judges were like, why? Why would you do this? Why would you do it this way? Right? And the great thing is, you guys hear Hades in the news right now, right? Patients in the news? The judge, one of the judges that was reviewing this law, was a black Haitian judge. And in fact, the very last question that was asked, this judge, the judge sat in the middle, tall black guy, asked, so what you're telling me is, you could pass this law and say, you're just going to ban all Haitians from buying property, right? And the state's lawyer, for 30 seconds, was the most painful thing I've ever seen. It was and eventually, he had to concede to the judge. Yes, Your Honor, a one-word change would include all Haitians. Right? And suddenly people who are not in our community could see, hey, that's unfair. You can't throw in all Haitians, but you can throw in all Chinese. Right? Okay. So, Project 2025 says, don't let people from China buy land. Florida says, don't let people from China buy land. Do I need to go into it more? Or is that pretty self-explanatory? Right? But it's not just, it never ends at land. It never ends at land. What's the next step? Education, higher education. Do not, actually before we get to the visas, here's the number one thing that Project 2025 wants to put back into law. The China Initiative. Alright, any researchers in here? Any doctors? Any tech people in here? Alright? I hope you know about the China Initiative, because the China Initiative knows about you. This was a plan under Trump. Trump said, we need to investigate Chinese Americans. We don't trust them for the same reasons that we stated over and over again. And the FBI dropped everything. The FBI dropped all other investigations and just investigated Chinese Americans. Over 3,000 investigations that they will admit to. 3,000 investigations of Chinese Americans, doctors, scientists, researchers. Do you know what they got out of those 3,000 investigations? How many cases of espionage? Say it. Zero. Batting zero. But they come out with 77 misdemeanors, right? You forgot to file this kind of paperwork, you didn't fill out this line correctly, you were not honest on your taxes, but no, it's fine. Do you know the other thing that the China Initiative did that actually is a real danger to us? When the China Initiative started happening in full force, you know how our community responded? Everyone shut up. Everyone stopped talking. Everyone stopped cooperating. The people who would normally call in with tips say, hey, I think this person is doing something weird. You should go check them out. All those stopped. And in fact, right now, in Houston, in San Francisco, in New York, the FBI is working to try to rebuild that trust with the community. Because they know they screwed up, and screwed up bad. Because it was going to take decades for them to rebuild that trust. Just like what happened after 9/11, right? They went after Muslim communities, and Muslim communities just said, we're just not going to talk to you anymore. We're not going to give you tips anymore. And that's much, much worse. So, their number one thing for education is bring back the China Initiative. The last time we did China Initiative, they found zero. And they dropped every other investigation in the United States in order to do it. Okay? Why would they want to go back to a program that found zero? That was 0% effective. Why do that? Other than to make life hard for Chinese scientists, doctors, and researchers. Right? There's no other purpose. The other things they want to do: eliminate student visas. That's me. That's my parents. I would not be here but for student visas. How many in here would not be in this room if it was not for student visas? Right? Pretty much. Or either you came here with a student visa, or your family member came here with a student visa and pulled you in with chain migration, right? Family reunification. They want to get rid of that too. Okay. So, this is not really education, but look, they're looking to ban TikTok and all that stuff. I kind of don't care, but I kind of care at the same time. I don't use any of this stuff, but the reason of why they want to get rid of it is as important as what they're trying to get rid of. And I'm happy to share these slides with you. And we don't have the Florida slides translated into Chinese, but we have the Texas slides, and we'll have the national slides translated into Chinese. So if you guys want that, I'm happy to share it with Echo and everybody else. So you guys don't have to try to read this stuff off here. Okay, so we talked about land. We talked about education. Employment is next. How do we get rid of you? How do we make sure you don't come here anymore? You can't own a home. You can't get an education. You can't work. And not only is this being done under the guise of national security, it's being done under the umbrella of intellectual property. Right? Because the idea is, look, Chinese people, just look at them. They like to steal. Everyone knows Chinese people steal. And if you don't want them to steal all your intellectual property, then just don't have them in your employment. Right? That makes sense. Chinese people can't help stealing, and so but the best way we can help them is by not giving them jobs. So it starts. It doesn't have to start with everything. Just like in the past, it starts small. You said, we're going to ban Florida universities from having cooperation with Chinese universities. Something that we've done all over the world, right? Because we build programs that people can go study in both places. People come over here and study, people go over there and study. It builds good relationships, and it builds good students, and it builds good future workers to have more opportunities. We're going to cut those off. Right? I don't want to spend too much time on this, but look, in Texas, we had a bill that at the beginning just said straight up, no Chinese students in Texas universities, period. Florida started out with a similar law, but Florida ended up passing a bill that says, you cannot employ a Chinese immigrant. I mean, at first that doesn't sound like it's too bad, but that means that, like, when my father came, he worked for the school, because he was poor. He worked for the school. He cleaned toilets and everything, so he could study. But, okay, maybe today they can borrow money, whatever else, but you know who can't do that? Graduate students. Because graduate students in their programs have requirements. You must be a TA. You must do a residency. You must be a lab assistant. How do you do that anymore? You can't. Right now, we're talking about the University of Florida. Lost 10% of the Chinese faculty already. They weren't mistaken in doing that. That was the exact intent. They have achieved their goals by that 10%. And they want more. And they're coming for more. And I want to be very clear about this. A lot of people say, well, they passed a law, but they only did that a little bit. We're okay. Don't worry about it. They're not going to do anything else. Are you sure? Because I've been a state legislator for over a decade now. And I always pass, not what I want, but what I think will pass. You don't think next time I'm going to come back for more? That every single time I'm going to come back for more until somebody punches me in the nose and says, don't ever come back for more. So right now our community has said, come back for more. We're not going to stop you. Because you did all these things. Nobody said a word. Not even a press release. No protests, no marches. Great. Okay? So, there's actually more to talk about, but we don't have that much time. This is just a quick summary of what we talked about. What will happen to Chinese people in Florida? Right? Revival of the China Initiative. How many universities are in this sector right here? How many universities have research departments all filled with Chinese immigrants? Filled with people in this room? I went to Tennessee. Tennessee in the Memphis area. Huge Chinese population. No community, no organization. Everybody's in research. Everybody's every day just looking at their own research and nothing else. When they are the ones who will be the most affected. Chinese researchers. Chinese immigrants. Right? Working in tech, working in research, working in medicine. Number one target. Ending of student visas. That's basically the end. If you cut off student visas, the flow of migration from China basically goes down to close to zero. Right? That's not a mistake. That's what they want. Right? It's written in Project 2025. Prohibition, ban on Chinese immigrants going to school, banning employment in research, academia, technology, communications, computer hardware, and computer software. That's everything. Right? This is modern society right here. And they're okay with it. They understand the ramifications. They understand what it means to remove Chinese people, Chinese immigrants from all those positions. They're okay with it. It's a sacrifice they're willing to make. Because they hate you that much. Elimination, this is big, Project 25. Elimination of chain migration. Trump actually has already tried this at the beginning of his presidency. Right? Ending chain migration, because that's the number one way Asians come here. Right? Implementation of alien land laws. Florida already passed those. Texas tries really hard. Okay. This is just some of the stuff.
Ban on WeChat, that's a huge.
Yep. Right? So, I always want to take the time to say this one thing. National security is a real concern. China is a known bad actor. I'm not delusional about this. China is a bad actor. We have to deal with them, but not this way. Right? That's the thing. If you say that China is a problem, then make China the problem. We are Chinese Americans. Right? We are thousands of miles away, separated by not only distance, culture, but our citizenship. Most of us are citizens. Many of us want to become citizens. I'm sure many of you fall into the same story, but my family, we didn't just come from China. We fled China. My father was thrown into the fields when he was 13. He barely came back alive. And he's messed up from it. So a lot of times when I get mad at him, my mom always reminds me, don't forget what happened to your dad. It messed him up really bad. There's many Chinese probably in this room who went through the Great Leap Forward, who got thrown in the fields. Right? To say to my family that you're a CCP spy, I don't have a nicer response other than fuck you. Okay? So, the problem is not that China is a good guy. The problem is that you have been treating our people the same way for 150 years. Because 150 years ago, when they started passing laws against Chinese and Japanese, they said Chinese and Japanese, they're disloyal. We can't trust them. They're going to report back to the Japanese emperor. They're going to report back to the Chinese emperor. They're not going to do what we want them to do. They're not going to do what's in the best interest of our community. They're not going to look after our national security. We don't trust them, so we pass laws against them. California's law was the match that sparked the fire. 1913, it was passed not against the Chinese, but it was passed against the Japanese. Because the bad feelings at this time were against the Japanese. Because Japan was a rising power. Right? 1913, 30 years before the Japanese internment. 30 years. General John DeWitt, the man who was in charge of the Japanese concentration camps, said famously, "A Jap's a Jap. It makes no difference whether he's an American citizen or not." For everyone who says, "I'm not worried, I'm a citizen," the Japanese back then said the same thing. Jews in Germany, the Jews in Germany who joined Jews for Hitler, said the same thing. I just ignore it, I'll cooperate, whatever, it'll protect me. No, it won't. No, it won't. The danger for us is you can replace Japanese with Chinese, and this quote works exactly the same. It works just as well. You know why? Because that is the racist stereotype against all Asians. It works for any Asian group because we don't trust them. They are by nature untrustworthy. And that's not my words. People testifying in committees have literally said those words. There is something inherently wrong with Chinese people. There is inherently something wrong about their civilization. There is something genetically defective about them as a people that they cannot be trusted. These are not the new, I don't like hip-hop type of racism. This is the old racism. That your people, by their nature, are defective. What do we do with defective things? We destroy them. We replace them with something that's not defective. I'm not going to read this. I'm going to get too worked up. But this is saying the same thing. The point of all this is to say that our community, this country, has always looked for people to blame. When we were not here, they blamed the Irish. When the Irish were in power, they blamed the Italians. Right? And when we came, they blamed us. And the people in the black community have received the blame for the entirety of their existence, for something they had no control over. Our community always looks for scapegoats. The difference is the Irish fought back. The Germans fought back. The Italians fought back. African American community fought back. Did we fight back? No. Have you heard anyone talking about this anywhere around America? There's people who know about this. There's plenty of people in the Chinese community who know that this is going on right now. Have you heard from them? Why not? Because we're not ready to fight back. And until the day, no bully has ever stopped because you didn't fight back. Think about it. Why do you expect people that are picking on us, that are using us as a punching bag? Why not use a punching bag? Punching bags don't fight back. Just keep punching them. National security is a real issue. But if you want to have laws that deal with national security, then target those laws. Target those governments. Target their agents. But don't say that every single person in a community, because they have Asian face, is a spy for the CCP. It is not fair to say that all Mexicans